Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to open your eyes to something most people miss, something that happens in silence, in the quiet spaces between words, and in the distance that others often misinterpret as disinterest. I want to talk about the reality of avoidant personalities and how, even when they step back, even when they act like they don't care, they may actually be chasing you. But from a distance, you see, avoidants are complex souls. They fear closeness, but at the same time, they fear losing you even more. They create walls, not because they don't feel, because they feel so deeply that they can't handle the flood of emotions intimacy brings. And in those walls, they send signs, subtle, quiet, indirect, but real signs that they are still chasing you. When you know how to read those signs, you realize that silence doesn't always mean absence, and distance doesn't always mean disinterest. Break down 5 powerful signs that reveal when an avoidant is secretly chasing you, even if they can't admit it outright. When an avoidant person pulls away, it is one of the most confusing and painful experiences you can go through, because on the surface, it feels like rejection. It feels like they don't care, like you mean nothing, like they can walk away without hesitation. But the truth is, in many cases, that silence is not empty. It is not the silence of someone who has stopped caring. It is the silence of someone who is overwhelmed, someone who is watching you from a distance, someone who is deeply invested but too afraid to step closer. Their quietness is not absence. It is a different kind of presence. It is filled with observation, curiosity, and even longing, but it is wrapped in fear and self-protection. An avoidant struggles to balance 2 opposing needs, the need for closeness and the need for independence. This internal conflict makes them pull back when things get too intense, but pulling back doesn't mean detachment. In fact, many avoidants remain hyper, aware of the person they step away from. And they notice details that you think go unseen. They remember things you say in passing, they quietly check up on your life, and they follow your presence in subtle ways. Their silence becomes a way of protecting themselves from vulnerability while still keeping you within reach. It is not that they don't feel. It is that they feel so much that they can't manage it openly. When you post something on social media, an avoidant may be the first to see it. Even if they don't react, they may scroll through your photos, watch your stories, and linger on the things you share without leaving a trace. That invisibility is their safety. They want to know what's happening in your life without having to risk revealing that they care. And this is what confuses so many people. You see the silence, but you don't see the watching. You assume they're gone, but in reality, they're still there, just hidden behind the safety of distance. You might notice that even after long stretches of no communication, they still know things about you. They'll bring up something you did, some change in your life, some detail you didn't think they noticed. That's because they've been paying attention in ways you couldn't see. Their silence was not absence, it was filled with quiet observation. They may never admit it, but they are connected to you in ways they can't let go of, even when they create space. And this is where the paradox of the avoidant lies. They pull away because closeness terrifies them, cannot disconnect completely because losing you terrifies them even more. They feel safer when they can observe from a distance, when they don't have to be vulnerable, when they don't have to risk rejection or emotional exposure. But that safety comes at the cost of confusing the person they care about. To you, it looks like indifference. To them, it feels like survival. They are silently chasing you in the only way they know how, by watching, by keeping tabs, by holding onto you without stepping forward. If you've ever felt like someone is ghosting you only to find out later that they knew every little thing about your life, then you've witnessed this in action. Their silence doesn't mean you don't matter. Their silence is a shield, but inside that shield, they are still looking at you, still noticing, still feeling it is a secret pursuit hidden beneath layers of self-protection. And while this may feel unfair or even frustrating, understanding this truth is powerful. It helps you see that silence is not always the end. Sometimes it is the language of someone who doesn't know how to stay close but doesn't know how to let go either. Sometimes silence is not emptiness. It is presence in disguise. An avoidant may not reach for you with words, but they reach for you in their quiet ways, their hidden watching, their invisible closeness. And if you look closely, you will realize that behind their silence, there is a chase happening, a chase that is secret, subtle, and very real. An avoidant may appear as if they disappear completely from your world, but if you pay close attention, you'll notice they always leave behind traces of themselves. It could be subtle, almost invisible gestures, the kind that most people would dismiss as coincidence. Those who understand the psychology of avoidance know they are not random. They are markers, breadcrumbs scattered along your path, showing you that even if they cannot be fully present, they cannot bear to vanish either. Their need for distance clashes with their fear of losing you, and so they create a strange middle ground. They remain absent enough to feel safe, but present enough to still matter in your life. Those traces are their silent way of chasing you. It may come in the form of a sudden message after weeks of silence. Something that seems casual on the surface, like, hey, just checking in, or hope you're doing okay. But beneath that simplicity lies a deeper truth. They never stopped thinking about you. That message is their proof that they are still tethered to you, that no matter how far they step back, you linger in their mind. An avoidant doesn't send such things lightly. They craft them carefully. Too much closeness frightens them, but too much silence frightens them even more. Their messages are designed to keep a door open, to remind you they are still there. Sometimes their traces appear in even quieter forms. Perhaps they like an old post of yours, one that has been buried deep in your feed for months. That small action speaks volumes. It shows that they have been scrolling through your world, revisiting memories, lingering in your presence even when they don't announce it. Or maybe they send you something random that only makes sense in the context of an inside joke you once shared. That's not just communication. That's their way of anchoring themselves to the bond you built together. Each trace is deliberate, even if it looks small. An avoidant may also leave their mark through inconsistency. They will retreat, then return, then retreat again. This pattern is not because they don't care, but because they care too much and don't know how to balance their emotions. They appear at just the right moment, as if sensing when you are about to fully let go. It's not manipulation. It's their way of saying, I can't lose this completely if I can't hold it fully. They struggle with the permanence of goodbye, so they keep themselves in your orbit through fragments, little reminders that you are not forgotten. Sometimes those traces come through energy rather than words. You may think of them suddenly only to see their name pop up or receive a message shortly after. You may feel like they're present even in their absence. That's because when someone avoids direct closeness but still holds you tightly in their thoughts, there is an invisible thread that connects you. You feel it in ways that defy logic because their energy never truly leaves. They leave fragments of themselves in your life, not just to remind you of them, but to reassure themselves that they haven't lost you. It is easy to misinterpret these traces as inconsistency, as games, as confusion. But to an avoidant, this is survival. It is how they maintain proximity without drowning in the intensity of connection. They are terrified of being engulfed, yet they are equally terrified of being forgotten. So they find a way to linger in between, half in, half out, but never fully gone. Every time they leave a trace, it is a silent declaration that you matter to them. It is their way of saying, I can't walk away from you completely, even if they can't say those words out loud. And this is why you may feel haunted by their presence even in their absence. You may go through stretches of silence only to be reminded that they still exist in your world through something small yet powerful. And there's a message, a like, a memory they suddenly bring up, a call that seems out of the blue. These are not accidents. They are signs of someone who cannot sever the connection, who is chasing you in the shadows while pretending to stay at a safe distance. The avoidant may never admit they are chasing, but their traces reveal the truth. They leave pieces of themselves scattered in your life because deep down they cannot bear to disappear. Their way of holding on looks different from what you might expect. It is not grand gestures. It is not constant presence. It is not spoken devotion. It is subtle, cautious, hidden. But it is there. And when you understand this, you realize that every small trace is not random. It is the footprint of someone who still values you, even if they are too afraid to stand beside you openly. An avoidant may look detached on the surface. The truth reveals itself when you start to pull away. It is in those moments when your energy shifts, when your attention moves elsewhere, when you stop reaching out, that the avoidant suddenly reacts. They may not admit it openly. They may not confess what they feel, but their behavior changes in ways that are impossible to ignore. Their reaction is not random. It is rooted in fear. The fear that while they were busy protecting their own space, they might have lost you. And that fear is enough to push them into motion, to bring them out of the shadows where they were watching you silently. You see, an avoidant's greatest struggle is balancing the need for independence with the need for connection. They crave closeness, but fear being consumed by it. So they distance themselves, telling themselves they're safer this way. But when they sense you pulling away, when they feel your absence, they are reminded of the other side of their fear, the fear of abandonment. Fear of truly losing someone they actually care about. And it's in that tug of war that their reaction shows itself. They may send a sudden message, appear after weeks of silence, find an excuse to talk to you. It's rarely a direct admission, but it is always a sign that your distance has unsettled them. This reaction can take many forms. Sometimes it's soft and subtle, like a, hey, how have you been? A gentle attempt to check if you're still there. Other times it might show up as irritation or even conflict. They may pick a fight or criticize you suddenly, but beneath the surface, it's not anger at you. It's fear manifesting in a clumsy way. Fear that you are slipping out of reach. Fear that the one thing they wanted to keep at a distance is about to disappear altogether. Even negative attention in their mind is better than silence, because silence from you threatens their sense of control, their sense of connection, their sense of security. There are times when you'll notice a sudden increase in their communication right after you've stopped trying. When you were calling, texting, and giving them energy, they seemed indifferent. But the moment you go quiet, they suddenly remember to reach out. That's because avoidants often take for granted that your presence will always be there. But when you begin to pull back, triggers a deep discomfort they cannot ignore. It exposes the truth that they do value you, that they do feel your absence, and that they are not as detached as they try to appear. It can even show in nonverbal ways. Maybe you see them watching your stories more often, liking your posts after, ignoring them for weeks, or finding excuses to be in the same space as you. These are not coincidences. These are their subtle attempts to re-establish proximity, to remind you and themselves that they haven't lost you yet. An avoidant rarely admits vulnerability. Their actions betray them when they feel you slipping away. The pull of connection becomes stronger than their fear, at least temporarily. What's important to understand is that this reaction is not about manipulation. Many people misinterpret it that way. It is not that they are playing games, it's that they are battling their own fears. When you pull away, it activates a survival instinct in them. The thought of losing you permanently is too painful, so they act. Their actions may be confusing, sometimes affectionate, sometimes argumentative, sometimes strangely casual, but the root of it all is the same. They are chasing you, even if they can't admit it to themselves, and this pattern repeats itself often. You'll notice they are most present when they feel you are least invested. It's because your withdrawal creates a gap they cannot tolerate. It reminds them of their feelings, their attachment, their vulnerability. It forces them to acknowledge what they try so hard to suppress. They may never say it in words, but their sudden appearance is their unspoken confession. I still care. I don't want to lose you. So when you find yourself confused by an avoidant's hot and cold behavior, remember this truth: the distance they create is for their comfort. Your distance shakes that comfort to the core. And in those moments, their reaction, whether small or dramatic, is proof that they are still emotionally connected to you. It is not indifference that makes them come back when you pull away. It is attachment, it is fear, it is longing hidden behind layers of self-protection. Their chase doesn't look like the open pursuit you might be used to. It looks like silence until silence from you becomes too heavy. It looks like sudden reappearances, awkward conversations, unexpected calls, even unnecessary arguments. It looks like a person who doesn't know how to stay close but cannot bear to let go either. And when you understand that, you begin to see their reaction for what it truly is: the evidence that you matter, the evidence that your absence touches them, the evidence that even in their avoidance, they are still chasing you from a distance. Jealousy is one of the clearest windows into an avoidant's hidden attachment, and yet it rarely comes out in the direct, obvious ways most people expect. An avoidant personality thrives on appearing unaffected, on looking detached, on convincing both themselves and the world that they do not need anyone. But when they see you giving attention to someone else, when they sense that your energy might be shifting away from them, their mask begins to crack. They may never come out and say, I'm jealous, because that would expose vulnerability, and vulnerability is exactly what they fear most. Instead, their jealousy leaks out in subtle, indirect ways: small changes in behavior, slight shifts in tone, little acts that betray the truth they are trying so hard to hide. You might notice it when you talk about spending time with other people. They may act indifferent, nodding along or pretending not to care, but later their responses become colder, more distant, or strangely defensive. They might withdraw, not because they want distance in that moment, because jealousy has been triggered and withdrawal is their shield. It's their way of saying, I don't like this, without having to expose the rawness of actually admitting it. An avoidant doesn't want you to see the depth of their feelings, but their jealousy tells on them. Sometimes jealousy shows up in sudden bursts of attention. Perhaps they've been silent for days. The moment you post something where you're with other people, or when they sense you might be focusing your energy elsewhere, suddenly they send a message. It might be casual, something like, hey, what's the looks? What's up? But the timing says everything. They are checking in, making sure they haven't lost their place in your world. The fear of being replaced overrides their fear of closeness, at least for that moment. It isn't coincidence. It's a quiet chase sparked by jealousy. You may also see it in the way they subtly try to regain your attention. They might compliment you when they usually don't, recall a memory you shared, or bring up something only the two of you understand. These are ways of anchoring themselves back into your emotional world. Jealousy motivates them to remind you that they are still there, still relevant, still connected to you. They may not say, I don't want you giving your time to someone else, but their behavior whispers it all the same. In some cases, avoidants express jealousy through dismissiveness. If you share something exciting about someone else, they may downplay it, act unimpressed, or even criticize the person involved. On the surface, it looks like detachment, but underneath it's driven by envy and insecurity. It's not that they don't care, it's that they care too much and cannot admit it. Their defense mechanism is to minimize what threatens them, to act like it doesn't matter, when in reality it matters deeply. Another subtle form is through changes in consistency. When they sense competition for your attention, they may suddenly appear more often, making small efforts they weren't making before. It could be checking in more regularly, reacting to things you post, or trying to find reasons to interact. This shift might confuse you. It's jealousy pushing them into motion. Their fear of losing you to someone else makes them fight in their own quiet, indirect way. What's important to recognize is that their jealousy is not about control. Exposure, it exposes the reality that despite their distance, despite their avoidance, they do feel deeply. Jealousy strips away their illusion of detachment and reveals that your presence in their life is important, maybe more important than they want to admit even to themselves. It's one of the strongest signs that an avoidant is chasing you, because jealousy is rooted in attachment. You cannot be jealous of losing something you don't value. The tricky part is that because their jealousy is hidden, you have to learn to read between the lines. Look at their timing, their sudden reappearances, their subtle criticisms, their shifts in tone. All of these are breadcrumbs of the truth. They may not confess it with words, but their actions betray them. They chase you indirectly because direct pursuit feels too vulnerable. Jealousy forces them into the uncomfortable space of revealing in small doses how much you matter to them. So while others may overlook these subtle signs, if you pay attention, you will see the patterns. You will see how their behavior shifts whenever someone else enters the picture. You will see how their indifference becomes shaky, how their silence gets broken, how their efforts increase in quiet ways. Their jealousy is not loud, it's not confrontational, but it is powerful proof. Proof that beneath the walls, beneath the avoidance, lies a heart that fears losing you. Proof that no matter how much they distance themselves, you hold a place in their world that they cannot easily surrender. Proof that they are, in their own complicated and hidden way, still chasing you. Pushed forward not by openness, but by the quiet sting of jealousy they cannot escape. And avoidance distance is one of the most misunderstood behaviors in relationships. On the surface, rejection. It looks like they don't want to be near you, like they're uninterested, or like they've already let go. But in reality, for many avoidants, distance is not rejection. It is a way of control. It is the space they create not because they don't care, but because caring too much overwhelms them. They use distance as a coping mechanism, a shield to manage emotions that run far deeper than they allow anyone to see. When you understand this, you begin to realize that their pulling away does not necessarily mean they're letting you go. It often means they are chasing you in the only way they know how, by staying close enough to hold on but far enough to feel safe. Avoidants are not detached because they lack feelings. Quite the opposite. They are often people who feel intensely, but because of past experiences or fears of vulnerability, closeness becomes uncomfortable. So they retreat. They need space to regulate themselves, to calm the storm inside, to feel like they are not losing control. That space is not about you being unworthy. It is about them needing safety in the only way they understand it. And paradoxically, their distance can be their version of staying connected. It is how they maintain a bond without drowning in it. When they withdraw, they are not necessarily trying to erase you from their life. More often, they are trying to preserve the connection by managing it on their terms. They may step back physically, but emotionally, they keep you in their orbit. They think about you. They check on you from a distance. They make sure they haven't lost touch completely. Their distance gives them a sense of control over the relationship, but it is not the kind of control that comes from dominance. It is control that comes from fear of being engulfed, fear of being hurt, fear of losing themselves in closeness. So they build space not to cut you off, to keep themselves steady while still holding on to you. If you look carefully, you'll notice that avoidants rarely cut off completely unless they are truly finished. Instead, they linger. They respond just enough to remind you they are still around. They initiate contact when they feel you pulling away too far. They leave subtle reminders of their presence, even during long stretches of silence. This behavior can be confusing because it feels contradictory. Why stay at a distance if you care? But for them, distance is not contradiction. It is comfort. It is their way of saying, I still want you in my life, but I can't handle being too close right now. This is why distance should not always be misread as a lack of interest. It is often the exact opposite. If they truly didn't care, they wouldn't bother keeping the connection alive at all. They wouldn't reach out. They wouldn't watch from afar. They wouldn't leave traces of themselves in your life. Their choice to remain at a distance rather than completely disappear is proof of their investment. They are chasing you from that distance, keeping you within reach while preserving their own sense of safety. Think about the times when you've stepped back. How often do they suddenly return when you give them space? How often do they reappear just as you start to let go? That timing is not random. It reveals that even while they are distant, they are paying attention. They may not engage in constant closeness, but they make sure you don't drift too far away. Their distance is strategic, not because they want to push you out, but because they want to keep you close on their terms. What often confuses people is the inconsistency. One moment they're warm, the next they're gone. One moment they reach out, the next they pull back. But beneath that inconsistency lies a consistent truth: they are attached. They are just managing that attachment in the only way they know how. To them, distance is not a lack of love, it is a form of survival. And within that survival, they are still chasing. So they are still trying to hold on to the connection without feeling like they are losing control of themselves. The paradox of the avoidant is this: they chase by stepping back, they remain connected by creating space. They show they care by refusing to let the bond fully break, even if they cannot handle closeness. It's not the chase you are used to seeing. It is not loud, not obvious, not openly affectionate. It is quiet, subtle, hidden behind walls of self-protection. But if you look closely, you will see it. Their distance is not rejection. It is their way of staying. It is not abandonment. It is their way of holding on. And it is not disinterest. It is a sign that they are, in their own guarded way, still chasing you, even if they can only do it from afar. So as we reach the end of this talk, I want you to remember something deeply important. Avoidants are not heartless, and their silence is not always rejection. Their distance, their hesitations, their indirect ways of showing up, these are all signs of someone who feels more than they know how to handle. They may not chase in the way you expect, but they chase in the way they are capable of. And if you learn to read those subtle signs, you will see the truth behind the silence is awareness, behind the distance is connection, behind the avoidance is longing. The key is not to confuse their behavior with indifference. An avoidant who keeps leaving traces, who reacts when you pull away, who shows jealousy in indirect ways, and who holds you close even through distance, is someone who is still tethered to you. They may not express it with loud declarations, but their actions whisper it in ways you cannot ignore. Their chase is quiet. It is real. So take this understanding with you, not just to make sense of their behavior, but to also free yourself from unnecessary pain. When you recognize the signs for what they are, you begin to see the hidden language of their love, the silent ways they fight to keep you in their world. And that awareness gives you clarity, strength, and the ability to decide how you want to move forward. So thank you for listening. Thank you for opening your heart to new perspectives. And thank you for allowing me to share these insights with you today. I hope this message stays with you, reminding you that love doesn't always speak loudly. Sometimes it hides behind silence, but it's still there, waiting to be seen. Goodbye for now, and may you carry this wisdom with strength, with patience, understanding. Thank you.